Hi, Danny.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Um, Today, I would love to deconstruct and reconstruct the idea of having a quote unquote personal relationship with God or personal relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. Um, I think that's an interesting topic. Did you grow up in like maybe I heard you talk about this in passing. The Jesus is my boyfriend era. Did you grow up in that world?
I did talk about this briefly last week with another group of people at church.
Was I
Um,
there? I feel like I just had a conversation with someone, or
you
at least was adjacent to it.
So what happened was it was a group of people, we were talking about it, and somebody else brought it up. They said that they felt that when people say like Jesus is my bestie, that's
Uh-huh.
like too flippant. Like they're like, if you really believe that Jesus and God are like the creator of our entire reality and universe, then saying like Jesus is my bestie is like very overly familiar,
Hmm.
was the point that they were making.
Someone at our
Yes.
church was making that claim. Okay.
Yes. So someone else was saying that. And then I followed up with saying, yes, when I was in high school, I had some friends that were like, Jesus is my boyfriend. And I thought that was gross. And you were like not in the group of people. You were like over off to the side, but you overheard that and laughed out loud.
That's funny. I do remember that now. What I'd be interested to know. So I went to a Christian college, and it was not like a Bible college. I mean, they would probably say they're like a more progressive Christian college because they have a football team and they let non-Christians in, but they were still more conservative. Like I couldn't have a girl in my room past 10 o'clock. And if you ever had a girl in your room, you had to have, it was a 4 on the floor rule. So like you had to have
Yeah,
4 feet, your feet, their feet on the floor. There was I think our handbook actually said there's no reclining with the opposite sex. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, to
that's
recline.
wild.
Uh,
Yeah.
but so our school was religious, but we had a female campus pastor, and the mental gymnastics people would go through to get to this. They'd be like, well, we're not really a church, which is why she can be a pastor. Or this is like the mental gymnastics were crazy, which has nothing to do with my initial point. But I remember one time she was facilitating chapel and she invited up a student who was a friend of mine. And he came up and he let off the prayer with like, hey, Jesus. And like people lost their mind because it was like too casual. And so do you think that's too casual? Do you think like, do you have a beef with like the casual, like what is it that gives you the pause with all of this? If we're connecting that, is it like the casualness? Is it the boyfriend stuff is oddly sexual. So that has its
Yes.
own like legs to it. But what is your general take in beef with any of it or not beef with it?
I wouldn't say I have beef. I think that I just have a difference of preference, I guess. Or maybe even like a difference in theology. I don't know. But the boyfriend thing, my number one issue with it is it's like weirdly sexual. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
weird. Like, don't
Yeah.
Jesus is not your boyfriend. Like, don't be gross. So that's why I like don't like that specific thing. I do have a friend who every time she prays out loud, she starts the prayer with "Hey God," like "Hey
Yeah.
God,"
Yeah.
and it's not that I have a problem with it. I do think that it's very familiar, but I think like if you are coming from a specific tradition that really prizes this personal relationship with Christ, personal relationship with God, then it makes sense to do that and like have that kind of overly familiar flair to your
Yeah.
interactions with God. Um, but yeah, I just don't think that I guess the reason I wanted to talk about this is because throughout my deconstruction and now like reconstruction, one of the things that I have left in the past is this idea of a personal relationship with God. Like, I don't really feel like I
Yeah.
need one of those. And so that's something that I wonder if other people are listening to this and they might think they might be feeling the same way. That's something that I just kind of wanted to unpack a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll say more about that. Like, why do you feel like that is a stage you've moved into? Because I go back and forth, right? Because I feel deeply connected to a personal relationship with Jesus. Like, that's something that feels like important to me. It feels engaging to me. It doesn't feel like naturally. or inherently bad to me per se. But I did just see a tweet about this that said a personal relationship with Jesus is the evangelical church's way of skirting personal responsibility for systemic injustice. So like I see the things that are negative with it, like it becomes so individualized and
Mhm.
there's less of like a social impact. Um, but for me, like I don't see it as naturally problematic. Um, and it makes me wonder. I feel like we're just like ping ponging questions back and forth without answering each
Yeah.
other's questions. But it does make me wonder, like, what is the draw to church with for someone who a personal relationship with Jesus isn't essential? What is the draw for you? Because for
Mm,
or
okay.
specifically to like a Christian church, I guess, because that would be at least for many, they would say the only reason, right? In the
Yeah.
evangelical space.
That's a really good question. And also, I want to apologize for my dog barking really loud just then. She
It's been several episodes since your dog has had a guest appearance.
Well, and she was in the room with me back in the corner, and usually when she's in here with me, she doesn't bark. So I don't know. Anyway, sorry about that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I am not okay. And this is also something, this is all like in process for me, in process thoughts. So this is not maybe like my final landing place with this, but a lot of my friends right now, like me and my husband's friend group, I am the only churchgoer.
Yeah.
And I was talking to some of them a couple nights ago because also going to church is pretty recent for me. Like it's only been about a
Yeah.
year. So when we met and started forming our friendship, I was not claiming really any sort of religion other than being like this kind of ex formerly religious person, right? And so I wouldn't say that I have a personal relationship with God and I don't feel like I need one, but I have chosen to continue going to a Christian church and kind of like practicing Christianity because one reason is because it's familiar. Like I grew up a Christian.
Yeah.
It's a big part of what has shaped me into the person I am today, for better for worse. And so that is one reason, like can't be overlooked. It's familiar. And
Yeah.
two, there is this other thing that I like can't quite name that does kind of draw me to it of like I really like a lot of the teachings of Jesus. I like a lot of the inclusivity that is at least attempted in progressive Christian spaces. And I think that with the cultural familiarity of Christianity, it gives groups that want to do actual good works kind of a foothold of
Yeah.
like, oh, we're doing this in the name of Christ, I suppose. And yeah, so that's kind of the second piece that I'm like, I don't know, I just feel like there's something here, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I can really put my finger on it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm continually amazed by the kinds of people that are drawn to the well. Or really to progressive Christian spaces in general. Like just take the well out of it. Like because there's I think all the things you named are things that draw people. And certainly like a connection to and relationship with Jesus is a large portion of that for a lot of people. But I do know
Mhm.
that specifically in Christian spaces, this is maybe more of like a unique thing that isn't in conservative spaces. Is like people are drawn to the mission or the practices more than they're drawn to like the person of Jesus or the theology per like to some degree. And so that's just like a unique thing. And especially coming from me, someone who's like deeply passionate about Jesus, I'm always
Mhm.
reminded that like we have people in our space that are somewhat maybe curious about Jesus, but less passionate about his impact in the day to day as I might be, you know?
Yes. And I don't know. Yeah, I guess I like part of me kind of doesn't really know what to make of Jesus because I think it's undeniable how important the person of Jesus has been to especially our current like American cultural knowledge.
Yeah.
And that is also that like comes with good and bad. Um, but and when I read the Gospels and see how radical Jesus was, especially for the time and the culture that he was in, I think that's really beautiful and really compelling and something I want to emulate.
Yeah.
But if I think about like, okay, if there was this guy today in 2026 in America who is like, I'm the son of God, and he was going around and like feeding the poor and championing, kind of the outcasts of society and all this stuff. And he had a close knit group of like really loyal followers. I'd be like, this guy's a cult leader. Like he's a
Yeah.
megalomaniac and he's a cult leader. And so that is kind of incongruent to me. And I don't really know what to do with that either. So
Yeah. Is that, we talked about this in passing as well. Your thoughts on The Chosen? But I've just started watching The Chosen. And I just got to it, like I think it's episode 5 or something like that.
yeah.
And I will add as a caveat, I've resisted this show for a long time because I'm like, I'm not watching this stupid evangelical propaganda.
Yeah.
And then I heard too many people I trusted being like, that's not the worst. So I gave it a try. But to the thing you just said about like this weird cult leader thing, the episode I just watched, they went to the wedding where Jesus turns water into wine.
Yeah.
I've not got to that part yet of the episode. I turned it off and went to bed. But what I was struck by was like Jesus and his posse rolls into this wedding and like he's just getting met by like childhood friends. And it's this like, and it makes Jesus seem much more human than we ever really talk about him, which was interesting for me to think about as like a communicator and preacher of like, how do I talk about Jesus as not just like an idea, but a real person with like friends and family and all that. But I was struck by like all the places in scripture where he's like, people say nothing good comes out of Nazareth, all the places where he's like, you can't do ministry in your own hometown, all those things. And the idea that like too many, he was exactly what you just said you would think about if you saw a Messiah walking around today is like, and there's a reason that he was like killed, right? Like he was not seen as a revolutionary by the masses, but by a group that carried on his story, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just funny because if you did drop that into today, it would get like picked up by TMZ. There'd be like a Netflix documentary about it. And it would all be about how, I guess it would have to end harmful for it to like, but anyway, you know what I mean? It does check he does check a lot of boxes of like, if you just dropped him into 2026, he'd be prime candidate for like a cult documentary.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't want this to turn into like Maggie's heresy hour, but here we are.
That's what we'll call this episode.
Maggie's heresy hour. Yeah, that would be great. But there are some things that even in the stories of Jesus, not every single thing that happens in the gospel, I'm like, wow, how beautiful. Like there's some things that I'm like, ooh, that's like a little weird.
Yeah.
That doesn't sit well with me. Especially the kind of like, we maybe talked a couple weeks ago about Jesus asking one of the disciples to just drop everything, like don't think about it, drop everything, join me, and how that is a red flag to me of like, this person is not to be trusted if they're asking you to not think and just do. That's very so then, but I'm like, but it's Jesus, so how do I square that? And then that's where my kind of like, well, these stories were written to tell a certain story. It was written to tell a message, and maybe that's not what actually happened. Maybe that's what the author wanted. That's the story that the author wanted to tell. I don't know. But this is Maggie's heresy hour, so we can say we can think whatever we want about it.
I mean, you're always able to think what you want. Yeah, I mean, how much? So back to like this idea of like this personal relationship with Jesus, like how much of would you say his humanity, if Jesus was all divine and we just knew that? I mean, I guess we knew everything, then everything would be different. Then you take the faith
Yeah,
component out of it. So there's a
for
little
sure.
bit of like unfair question. But is his humanity what gives you pause? Is it like his is it the fact that he's like, I just don't think he's God. I don't think there is a God. Like what are some of the sticking points for you personally in that? Because do I'm not like a naive person by nature necessarily. Like I'm a challenger, but I also like don't know that once I like jumped I was skeptical until I started following Jesus. And I've certainly
Mm.
it's not all been like rainbows and butterflies since, but I've never really like walked that back or had any concept of walking that back. So I guess for you, like what are some of the things that give you pause as someone that was in the world, out of the world, not dipping it back a toe into the Christian practices of this world?
Yeah. So I think that the evangelical church really, really pushes this idea that like you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, like you do a friend, like you do like someone like a real human being that you know in real life.
Right.
And I think that that can be, at least for me, that took on this flavor of like, oh, if I'm not reading my Bible and having quiet time every day, then I'm
Hmm.
disappointing a friend. If I, if I do something that is
Yeah.
sinful, then I'm hurting my friend's feelings. Like it became this very, I think maybe I took it too literally. I don't know. But I kind of formed this like codependent relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And throughout my deconstruction, I think that that makes God and Jesus too small. Like, I feel like if there really is this um, God of the universe that created everything and is omniscient and omnipresent, like, there's no way that his feelings could be hurt by you not reading your Bible at 6 a.m. every day. Like, there's no way that he could be
Yeah.
disappointed in you for choosing some earthly or worldly endeavor over
Yeah.
him,
What is it? Yeah, well, I mean, it is interesting because it's like I get what you're saying, but also it's
Mhm.
like no, you wouldn't hang out with a friend that like treated you like that in real life. You know what I mean? And so, like this idea of like shaming the hell out of you for like not being there in the way they want you to be there. Now, granted, like if you have a friend and you've like missed their birthday party 5 years in a row and they've invited you every year, it's like maybe you're the shitty friend.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it's like, so at some point, it's like there has to be a two-way street of engagement. But like some of those things, like I hear a lot of like shame and guilt and fear that's
Mhm.
like baked into it. And you probably wouldn't in any other space call that a friend, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you said the two-way street of engagement thing,
Hmm.
which I do agree for human relationships, but for a relationship with the divine, is it a two-way street?
I mean, I would have to imagine so. Like if we're going to use the concept of relationship, then I think it has
Mhm.
to be because it's not otherwise it's a and I don't know what the word would be, but it's just unilateral, right? It's your which I do think is like the problem. If like Jesus is my homeboy as one side of the pendulum, Jesus despises me but tolerates me as the other side of the
Mm.
pendulum. And like one of the both of them kind of have similar flavors depending on where you are in. Like the Jesus despises me, it's because I'm awful and terrible,
Mhm.
and I'm just lucky that God chose me. And then on this other side, kind of what it sounds like you experience as the Jesus is my friend or homeboy world. It was that, but only it was a very conditional friendship, right? It was conditional on your holding up your side of the bargain. And Jesus's friendship only required, again, maybe a level of tolerance. I don't know. So it's like in both of those, they just don't sound like the most healthy relationships. And for me, ones that I have not really had to like do a lot of parsing through. But like if those were either of my options, I don't know. I would choose either of those either.
Yeah. I excuse me. I would say that the opposite of the like Jesus is my homeboy idea is actually like a very detached creator. So like in my mind, kind of the two sides of this spectrum are one, Jesus is my homeboy, Jesus is my boyfriend, whatever. This kind of like overly familiar, very human, very
Yeah.
two-way street relationship. And then the other side is kind of how like the Greek gods are conceptualized of like kind of cold, detached, involved with humanity only in so much as they are in charge of humanity, but like also this kind of very chaotic, like Greek gods don't really care about humans, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and don't really have this loving relationship. So for me, that's kind of the other option. And I don't really think that that's true either. Like, I don't think that. I feel like if you're gonna believe in God, why would you waste your time believing in a God that doesn't care about you? You know, like
Yeah.
I think that there has to be kind of something in the middle where you you have a you have experiences with and it, like encounters, quote unquote, however you want to call whatever you would want to call that, with divinity, like with God. But it's not this kind of like shitty, like deadbeat dad, like the phone works two ways type of a deal with a
Public screws.
do you know what I mean? Like
I do know what I mean.
because
Yeah.
if we're conceptualizing God as a father and us as children, and God as God and us as weak humans, then in this kind of power dynamic we've set up, God is the one in charge. So I feel like the responsibility then should be on them to cultivate the relationship with us and not the other way around.
Mm. Yeah. So
And
interesting. Were you? Go ahead.
I think that can look a lot of different ways. I don't think that it means, you know, miracles and all this tangible stuff. I think that you can, it sounds like so woo woo for me to say like encounter divinity or encounter the divine or whatever. But like, yeah, like I think that you can do that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's very woo woo, very granola of you.
So
Uh,
woo woo of me.
um, you were at the drip, right? This new Thursday night thing we're
Uh-huh.
doing.
Yeah.
In that, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know, because they wouldn't know, it's like a Thursday night extra sermon, but like more academic in some ways. But in it, we had discussion at the end. How was your? I'm just like we talked about like encountering Jesus and walking on the road to Emmaus, and I don't know who was in your group, but like, how do you? Were you? No, I do know who's in your group. You were in the far right group, like which is an eclectic group because there's like a
Mm-hmm.
former fully deconstructed or fundamentalist who like
Mm-hmm.
has fundamentalist theology but doesn't believe anything anymore. You have two brand new Christians like that have been Christians for like 6 weeks. They've been going to the
Mm-hmm.
well for 6 weeks. And then you and then a few other people. So like I'm just interested when you enter into a space like that, how do you engage in talking about Jesus and who he is and why he matters? Maybe is this where you had the boyfriend conversation? Was it at
Yeah.
oh,
Yes,
that's
it was
funny.
at that.
That's funny. All the pieces are coming together. So how do you engage in a group like that? Because it's like pretty eclectic. And to many, you might be like the picture of what being a good Christian looks like, especially to like these new Christians in the group or this guy that's fully deconstructed and thinks
Yeah.
that maybe people, you know what I mean? So like how do you engage in those and where are you at when you enter into those?
Yeah. That's I think that it's kind of crazy that anyone would think I'm the picture of what being a good Christian is. Because, and I joke a lot of like, oh, I'm a bad Christian, but it's because then I'll have like Maggie's heresy hour where I'm out here being like, I don't know if Jesus was divine, and furthermore, I don't care. Like that's my whole like
That's
shtick.
your whole thesis.
That's my whole thing. And so
That's funny.
that's just funny to me. But uh, I certainly I go into these conversations. There was a part of me that was like, okay, Maggie, not too much now. Like, don't go crazy. Don't like this is that conversation was not Maggie's heresy hour. Like it was very like let's just, and you also had asked me and another person in the group to kind of like moderate the discussion.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the two of us were able to kind of take the like, let's present the question and then just kind of like nudge the conversation along type of role.
Yeah.
So a lot of my thoughts and like things I was sharing were just kind of like a, well, and here's another way to think about it. What do you
Yeah.
guys think? And like throw that back to the group.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I ask. So,
Yeah.
how much do you think that role impacts your view of what a relationship with Jesus looks like? Like, do you feel like you have to like moderate and like parse through what you're going to say? Like, because that my suspicion was that you were like, you're a good leader and you're a good like people person. You know how to do that. So it's like you were like, I'm gonna keep certain things to myself to keep the conversation going and like move it forward. And like you even now, all the things are coming back to me. You prayed out loud, right, for the first time in like a long or like in a group, right? Like that was the whole.
Literally for the first time since which prayer is another thing that I've deconstructed and having I don't know if I'm having a difficult time, but I'm having an interesting time reconstructing it. I hadn't prayed out loud for a group like that in probably 5 or 6 years. Like it had been
Yeah.
so long. And then you were just kind of like, all right, Maggie, take it away. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. I
All right.
didn't mean to put you in a situation like that.
No, it's fine.
Uh, but so like that's what, and now I'm like talking out of both sides of my mouth because I'm like I'm the one that put you in this situation. But what do you like? Do you feel? I guess where I'm going is like I wonder if you have been taught or believe or care to think of like your engagement being like just the fullest, most honest version of yourself and like that being okay, or do you feel like you have to both in group settings? But does that also carry over into like private settings? Like you feel like you have to like moderate the version of yourself
Mm.
you give to like your faith or lack thereof.
Okay, I think I get what you're saying here. And I'm going to take it back to the Enneagram because this is one of the ways I know I'm not an 8 on the Enneagram. I am a very talkative person. I talk, 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 talk. I am no stranger to giving my opinion. I have no problem with that. But I also, especially in groups that I'm not super duper familiar with, like it's kind of like mixed company, like I don't really know all the people there, I will like really try to, yes, like moderate what
Yeah.
opinions I share versus what I keep to myself. And that's not a it's not a social chameleon thing in the sense that I'm trying to be tricky or manipulative or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I've had in high school, I had this kind of like frenemy relationship with someone who accused me of doing that. And I was like, no, I'm trying to make everybody comfortable. Like I'm trying to moderate how I
Mhm.
display myself to make
Yeah.
people more comfortable, but not in a fake way, like in a way that I'm trying to be nice, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And find acceptance of your own, I imagine, right? Like,
Yes,
I'm sure
yeah.
it's a double thing, right?
Yeah, because if you go in like guns blazing with and especially like I felt like, yeah, in a space like this where you were like, Maggie, I want to have you on the podcast. It's okay if you disagree with me. I'm like, okay, then great. Let's say
Yeah.
I'll share my more like maybe controversial Christian opinions or whatever. But I think that the space that we were at on Thursday night was just kind of like maybe not the time for that, or at least it wasn't on the very first night of that
Yeah.
event.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, so yeah, it's just kind of like I'm reading the room, I'm reading the people in the room, and I'm moderating or modifying, I suppose, like modifying what I would share given the people present. But it's not,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
not in
You're,
like an oppressive way, just in a way.
yeah. Like calculated, not like controlled. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
not being forced but you're like making
Yeah,
the choice.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So back to this relationship with Jesus thing. I know we've not really left this because Jesus can never leave us fully. But what do you imagine that there is like a world for you where you enter into that, or it's like that ship has sailed and now you're like on to different things?
Yeah. I think that I've just kind of I have just like a different concept of what a relationship with Jesus can look like now, I
Hmm.
suppose. Like, it's not like I have this idea of Jesus as this person that I'm always checking in with.
Yeah.
Like how like I'm married. So, like, me and my husband, we share a life, we share a home. I'm always checking in with him about, like, here's what I'm up to, here's what my plans are, like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? And what do you want to do? Like, I'm always kind of like taking his opinions into consideration as he's taking mine into consideration because we share a life. So I don't think about like my relationship with Jesus in that regard, but it has become much more of like a role model type
Mm,
relationship where I am using the person of Jesus to shape my actions.
mm,
And in that way, like, the reflection is kind of the relationship piece for
yeah.
me. But I don't know. I don't even know if that really makes sense.
Mm. Yeah. I I think it makes sense. I when you said when you said the reflection thing, I'm by no means a expert in the Baha'i faith, but
Mm,
one of the things that they kind of like believe is that, and I'm gonna like butcher this a little bit, but like if there's a God, we don't see that God necessarily, but we see the reflection of that God through a mirror.
mm,
So like Jesus was that reflection, Muhammad was that reflection. Um, and I think we are that reflection. I can't like that's where I lose it. I can't remember if like we are a part of it or not. But anyway, but like they would say like you couldn't look directly at the sun, but you could look at a
mm,
reflection of the sun in the mirror, something to that effect. And so that just made me think when you said a reflection, and like the idea of like my son doesn't want to grow up to be uh, Connor McDavid as a hockey player, but he wants to like emulate him so that he can be the best version of a hockey player himself. It sounds like that's what you're kind of saying, like that you're
kind of,
looking at
yeah.
like the model of what you think a integrated holistic life looks like, and you're more interested in that than like the promise of Sky Dad and what
Yeah.
is offered.
Yes.
Uh, or as our friend Justin says, Doug. So,
Dog. Yeah, I guess so.
um,
Yes, I very much that. Yeah, the kind of holistic emulation piece as opposed
yeah.
to Sky Daddy.
Sky Daddy, yeah. I want to say that. It just feels too weird for me to say Sky Daddy, so I say Sky Daddy. I got the
No, and
DY
I
off
think
there.
that's the correct choice.
Yeah. Uh, what? So what? Like, I don't know what. There's certainly someone listening that's in the same place you're in, or in like a slightly different where they're like looking, do I get back into church? Do I leave
Mhm.
church? um, do I just keep doing what I'm doing, But their relationship or their understanding thereof of a relationship with Jesus is a part of that. What would be your encouragement or discouragement to them? Like, what would you say to someone who's in that space?
So when I was in that space a little over a year ago, one of my good friends who is a Christian said, I was like, I want to go back to church, but I don't think I'm a Christian. And I feel like I can't go back to church. And she was like, Maggie, non-Christians can go to church. Like, you're allowed to go
Yeah.
still. And so that is what like finally kind of pushed me to try out the well. I also was very specific. I had heard of the well and I knew enough about it to know that I could roll up with this opinion and be like, look, guys, I don't really know if I'm a Christian or
Right.
not. And that it wouldn't be like okay, well, let's be really nice to you until we can force you into a mold that
Yeah.
is suitable to us. And I will say in the past year, my life has changed for the better being involved in a Christian community. And I think that speaks a lot to the Christian community that I'm involved with, because something that also kind of pisses me off is when evangelicals say, like, I don't know, like they paint an atheist life or an agnostic life or a non-Christian life as
Yeah.
this dark, empty, sucking hole of abyss. Like, and it's not. Like, when I wasn't going to church, I was still having a good time. Like, I still had friends. I still had things in life that fulfilled me. I didn't feel empty and desolate, you know?
Yeah.
So it annoys me when, especially evangelicals will say, like, oh, well, a life without Jesus is empty. And I'm like, my life wasn't empty. My life was really fun. And now that I'm in church and I have this Christian community and I'm kind of engaging, I'm like practicing Christianity again. It's still good. Like, it was good both ways.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know.
That is an interesting, like, it's funny you say that because I don't know that I would have like named that on my own, but I think
Mm,
about like the way that evangelicals talk about the atheist community,
yeah.
and in the spaces I've been in where I've had like debates or whatever with atheist folks, it's often the Christian counterpart argument is like the God-shaped hole in your life, or like um you must just be like depressed and discouraged and like longing for something all the time. And like,
Yeah.
and this is coming from me who does firmly believe Jesus offers something that is holistically formative. So I'm not
Mm,
saying that Jesus doesn't offer those things in abundance and all those things. But what I will say is like, I know a lot of atheists who are not like just on the last straw, like hanging in
yes.
there waiting for Jesus to come and like transform them. But I know, and this is interesting that I know a lot of Christians on their last rope hanging on, that like religion is the thing that's like slowly tearing the cords away. And like, what do we do with that?
Yeah.
Atheists are some of the happiest people I know, where like Christians are some of the saddest people I know. And what does that tell us about the state of the church? Probably a lot. I don't know what it says about Jesus, but I think it says a lot about the institution we built in his name.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole other thing of the like, it's not a religion, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
Uh, Fun little evangelical quip or whatever, where I'm like, okay, can we stop pretending that religion hasn't sunk its talons into American culture, and like, can we please stop pretending that these two things are separate, because they're not. At least
Yeah.
I don't think that they're separate. Do you think that they're separate?
Religion and politics, or religion and relationship?
Religion and relationship. Like, can you
Yeah.
say, like, you like, oh, Christianity isn't, it's not about a religion, it's about a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah. This will be a slightly obscure answer, I guess, but I would say, or like non concrete answer. But so I think that religion and a relationship with Jesus are different things. Like, I think
Mm,
religion is this thing we've built up. And I think that you can have a relationship with Jesus without religion.
mhm.
But I don't know that I would say, like, it's a relationship, not a religion. That's the statement, right?
Yes.
Like, I think that Christianity as an organization is a religion, not a relationship. But I am more interested in building a relationship with Jesus. But I mean, again, that's not like a Jesus is my boyfriend relationship.
Right.
Uh, and that, so I don't like, I guess it's just confusing, right? Because religion, I have more beef with religion than I do with Jesus. And so,
Mhm.
but I think Jesus had more beef with religion than he did with God, So it's like, I
Yeah.
think that's part of being a follower of Jesus, is engaging in Christian practices and religious practices. But I think it's always been like a part of pushing against the institution of religion. And where
Mm.
I find that statement reductive is it tries to intentionally not even blur the line, but like erase the line so that it's all conflated into one thing. And that's where it
Mm.
gets a little bit tricky, because I think you can have, and there's this growing edge on TikTok of like young Theo bro guys being like, you can't have Jesus without being in Christian community. And I'm like, I get that to some degree. Like, I think that Christian community is important, but I do think that like saying you have to go somewhere at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings, and that's what makes your relationship with Jesus more holy, I think that's silly to me. So,
Yeah.
but I think community is important, but community is important to the end that it's like, you need someone to talk to about these things to make sure you're not like spiraling crazy beliefs, I guess. Like that's what I think the benefit of community is, less like a check-in of control or a place to give your money, though you certainly can do those things. But I don't think that that's
Yeah.
what it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting you pointed out the you need Christian community or religious community, I suppose, as like kind of a check-in. It's like a checks and balances type of thing of like,
Yes.
um, I have not really thought about that as a, well, I definitely see it. I guess I've just never really named that as a benefit of Christian community. But my immediate thought, and I don't know if this is going to make the Mormons mad at me. Sorry, Mormons. I think my immediate thought was like, well, if you don't have that, then you wind up with Joseph Smith, who like goes out into the woods and looks into a hat and has a vision and comes back and is like, I made up a new religion now. And not
Yeah.
enough people told him no. I don't think he had a strong enough like Christian community around him to say like, hey man, this is actually not
You certainly are going to make the Mormons mad.
yeah, sorry Mormons, I'm sorry.
Which is, I will just say, a large portion of the deconstruction community. So maybe the ones that are listening aren't mad.
Yes,
They're just like, I agree with you.
I have really enjoyed throughout my deconstruction consuming a lot of ex-Mormon content because I relate a lot to, like, as an ex-evangelical, I relate a lot to ex-Mormons because they share a lot of similar harmful practices. So
yeah, it is like, and this doesn't need to turn into like a Mormon hate hour, but I would say, because actually, have I told you like the town I grew up in was like 80% LDS, and so like we had a
no, I didn't know
Mormon
that.
mayor, and like so like all of my friends were Mormon. They all went on their mission. I was the guy once I became a Christian that they called on their mission to ask questions they weren't allowed to ask, which is very funny to me. Or like
Wow.
get like book recommendations. I remember like talking to people on like, and not like private lines, but being like, I can't tell anyone I'm talking to you, or like, and they had like set books they could read. They would send me sermons that they like were watching about like their dog. Anyway, but it's funny because it's like that world of deconstruction is really high because it's like high control. But back to like what you said, it is interesting because if you are going to call Mormonism a heresy, it 100% fits into the bubble of started in the vacuum of no one in community telling this person no. Now, I'm going to play my own devil's advocate here, because though I certainly think that that is, I would say, a Christian heresy. No, I don't think Mormons are necessarily bad, but I think that's a heresy and started by a guy that like was like generally not a very good guy and like had some really crazy beliefs. But could that have been stopped in Christian community where he had people around him? I think probably. But the negative, where I'm going to play my own devil's advocate, is that will be used as a control mechanism to be like, don't be a free thinker. And then it just goes to the other side, right? And so it's like not every free thinker is going to start their own religion, but also you have that opportunity on it. So does that make sense? Like I just like, I feel like I want to critique him, but I also don't want to go too hard because his story would be used in evangelical spaces as a way not to like have intellectual curiosity or imagination.
Yes. And so much of this conversation I've been thinking, I don't think that it's one or the other. Like I think that part of another thing I said on Thursday when we were talking about the road to Emmaus, right? Road to Emmaus. Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was Emmaus or like Emmaus or like I wanted to put an extra syllable in there for no reason.
Yeah, he was on his way to an MMA match, is what it sounds
like.
An
MMA match. Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, part of the discussion was like maybe the mystery is the point of it, and like maybe this. I feel that way about a lot of Christianity. Maybe the mystery is the point. Maybe the point of having a religion that you follow and a God that you believe in is the work of navigating. How do we live in Christian community? How do we bring people back into this like kind of theological fold that we all share versus how do we know when it's time to branch out? How do we like, I think that there's a lot of this back and forth and very, I I'm doing this like tiptoeing motion because I feel like you have to like move very carefully with a lot of like wisdom and discernment, I guess. And
Yeah,
it's not going to be done correctly all the time. So, but like maybe that's the point of it. I don't know.
maybe that is the point of it. What is the point of it? Maggie, do you know?
No.
No.
Nope. Sure
I
don't.
no, sure don't. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. Like the all of this is centered around Jesus, and Jesus is like very important and all of this. But I think the ultimate question that many of these things, whether it's Joseph Smith or a personal relationship or my boyfriend, my homeboy, or my hater, like whatever it is,
Mhm.
like I think it all points back to like what do we in some way, what do we think about the nature of who Jesus is? What do we
Mhm.
think about the reason for why Jesus matters? And like, what do we think his integration into our everyday life is? Like, I think those are questions that are either taken for granted or never asked,
Yeah.
whether because they're assumed or just not thought of. And I think answering those questions maybe is a helpful way of like understanding your own theology of what that looks like. And like Christians are not all in agreement, right? Like Christians have very different views. I remember I went and did this Jubilee video, and I was in a car with a girl who's like, I met Jesus face to face and he healed me of all these things. And I was like, okay, what do I do with that?
Cool.
Like, I
Yeah.
was like, I haven't. And the guy we were debating was like, he was really sweet about it. And I think it made the final cut of the video, but he was like, I don't know. He's like, I can't argue with your personal experience, but like, I think that that's crazy. And I'm not saying she's crazy, but but like, you know what I mean? Like our view of who Jesus is and his nearness and proximity directly informs all of this. And for some people, he's like as near as the air we breathe, in like a metaphysical sense. In some ways, he's like literally physically chilling with me right now,
Right.
and somewhere in between.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's very interesting.
Yeah. There was this whole other branch of this that is maybe a little bit more like debate-y that I don't know if it's debate-y. Uh what am I trying to say? Okay, there was this whole other like kind of branch of this conversation that I was thinking about going into, and then we kind of talked about something different, which is fine. But the idea of like very young children or people with intellectual and cognitive disabilities having a concept of like all of this requires like really abstract metacognitive thinking that's like this is all very high level like thinking and cognition. So there is kind of that whole piece of it too of like, well, if this religion is just having a relationship with a being who we cannot see and cannot hear, then what do we do?
Yeah,
You know, there's this whole other like I feel like we could talk about this for a really, really long time and go down all these different rabbit trails because it has so many implications.
mhm.
Um, but again, maybe that is the point. Maybe the thinking about it and talking about it and asking it is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you just opened up more questions, and ideas for conversations for us to have,
Yeah,
especially like in your lane of like conversations around people of different abilities, like cognitively. Like, I think that's an
yeah,
interesting um, place to go. My friend's a pastor of a church, large church, and they did Easter at a different location. I don't know if you saw this. They just talked about it this last Sunday, and I think they did like a service for people with intellectual disability.
yeah.
There was someone there that I know who was like severely autistic was there,
Mhm.
but protesters like showed up to like protest Easter at their church because they're inclusive, but ended up like protesting this like alternative service that they were doing at their main campus for this
Disabled people.
community. Yeah, and so like
Right.
that was yeah, and that was just like really interesting to me of like and they like once they found out they like kept protesting, but that was interesting. But it opens up, and I've known this family and like their pursuit of like raising this child um and their concept of a relationship with God is probably far different
Hmm.
and is informed by conversations I've like never really been forced is maybe the wrong word, but like needed to have,
Yes. Yeah. Conversations you've never, needed to have. Yeah. Yeah. This is definitely a topic for another episode.
Yeah. Yeah. You're looking at the time. You're like, we don't have time for this.
I know. I'm like, I brought this up
Yeah.
48 minutes into.
Yeah. That's like more of like a 4 minutes in, not a 48 minutes in.
I know. Well, that's what I was saying. This was in my mind when we started talking, and then I was like, we kind of went a different direction, but we should talk about that a different time.
We should. Well, why don't you send us out? We got any golden nuggets or anything you want to send us out with?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't think I have any like golden nuggets or words of wisdom. I want to know your final thoughts though after this conversation. What's your takeaway?
My takeaway, that's a good question. I mean, I walk away with a couple things. Like my personal view of a relationship with Jesus is something that like I find to be valuable, and I want to get as close to the word of necessary as I can without saying it's necessary. But like, I just think that what I'm not interested in having a relationship with is like religion, in terms of like my denominational structure, or like United Methodists are really into this John Wesley guy, and like I just hate the idolization of him. And we were talking before, I was late to our recording because President Trump posted some like pretty idolatrous, pretty big idolatry, and so like that was like pretty wild to me. And so like the conflation of like nationalism and denominations and like all those things, that is not what I'm interested in. But I am interested in like, and kind of you said, like, I'm looking at who Jesus is and the life he lived. And I think if I emulate who he hung out with and who he cared for and the teachings that he shared and all the things that are in the red letters, though, I mean, he said some things I don't like always like love. Like, in one thing he said, like, violence is not cool. Like, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And I think another passage he's like, take up your swords, you know what I mean? And so,
yes.
So it's like, there's certain things that I still have to reconcile and make sense of. But by and large, following Jesus for me has been more formative than like being a United Methodist clergy person or being a part of the religious industrial complex.
The religious industrial complex, very much.
so I don't know, like I get the tension of like the relationship with Jesus feel and how it can really quickly become pseudo-sexual or controlling or all of those things. But for me personally, it has been the only compelling part of my faith life. The religion stuff I can take or leave.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think my kind of final thoughts as we kind of round it out here is that I am very clearly still exploring what this means, in what it means to have a relationship with a personal relationship with God and or Jesus in a way that isn't controlling or pseudo-sexual or weird or that I'm not sure really how to do that yet. And I don't feel like I've landed on anything that feels fully formed. And, who knows how long that's going to take, but I'm along for the ride. So
maybe we'll solve it next episode.
Maybe one more 50-minute conversation. We'll get it really nailed down.
We'll really nail it down. So, well, this has been good. I appreciate the conversation. I think you opened up some interesting ones that now we'll have to explore in episodes down the road, but this has been good.
Cool. All right. See you next time.
See ya.